Happy Tuesday afternoon. Looking forward to all of our time together. As we are settling in, I'm just going to put a quick poll in to see who's, they've moved things on me. Where are my polls? You love it when you get used to tech and then, okay, wait, where did it go? There we are. They've moved polls. I have just a quick poll to see if there's anyone new with us today. So I will put that up. And if you can't access the poll, but you are new, just please put something into the chat saying that you are new. That way we know who is new and that we can make sure that we are supporting everyone. Oh, we do have someone new. Thank you so much. I only need one. And then we'll know that we can make sure everyone gets supported. So I will go ahead and stop that poll. And thank you for contributing. And let's jump in and get started. So welcome to our Syllabification Day. As a reminder for those of you who are with us before, this is a smaller version of a much longer series. So this is an introduction, but we're just going to start off with some land acknowledgements, which I typically do, as well as a recognition and resources. So if you have resources to share, please do so. We'd love to have additional learning opportunities always coming our way. So I do put in the chat box for you a place where you can find out where your lands are, the native lands where you are located. In my region, obviously, I'm on the Nisqually, Cowlitz, and the Puget Sound Salish people's lands. I also have then a link to a podcast on national parks and Native Americans. If I've sent that before, then please let me know and I'll make sure I update it for next time. I always start with a recognition of the pain and trauma from over 400 years of racism in the United States and the ongoing issues that our communities of color are dealing with, especially those who identify as or are categorized as African American. It's a commitment to centering our work to dismantling structural racism and ensuring that every student is seen and successful in our schools and communities. It's really paying attention to implicit bias. So although I call these Zoom tips, it's also kind of requests. It is helpful for me and for us as we work together that you input your name and your district. And Janice, it looks like you have others in your room with you. So maybe if you put others' names so that if somebody other than you contributes orally, we can know the person's name, or else maybe that person could contribute orally. But it just helps us know where people are joining from. So just a quick overview on how to rename yourself if you don't know how to do that yet. Hi, Kay Hamilton and Kim, and those of you, Kim, I see SPS, thank you. Hi, Karen and Chandra. If you go to on the toolbar where it says participants, you can find your name, and next to it, you'll see more, and there's an option to rename, and you can just put your district after your name, and that would be helpful for us. We do ask that you stay muted when not talking. There's a mute button where you please unmute yourself at any time to contribute or ask questions. If it's quiet, I don't mind people being unmuted, but I will mute when there are distractions. Janice, you look like you've got IT behind you. Can you hear me? Okay. At least we've got that. All right. So the reactions button is where you can find the raised hand option. Because if you're not Jill, Janice, Darren, or Doris, or Amy, who's driving, I can't see you at the moment. I have to scroll through to the others. So I ask that you please use the electronic raised hand option so that you can contribute to the conversations. So that's under the communication icons, and annotations we'll be doing. So if you've never annotated before, you find the annotation option under the view options up at the top where it says you're viewing my screen. And when you do click that annotation, you'll get this toolbar pop up, and then you can draw, you can write, you can stamp, and you can use arrows. And if you click this format button, it will change the color of whatever you're writing with. Oh, that's changed. See, again, they put it over there, interestingly. Mine is... Well, now I don't know if you can see my annotation bar, but they've shifted how that looks on my end. Hope it's not too much shifted on your end either. All right, I do like to do some guideposts for us. I feel like these icons help indicate your engagement and your involvement. It also is a reminder for us, and it builds routines which support our students. It supports us as well. So at the top, these are handouts. When you see this icon, there'll be something that you can print and take back with you. An activity will be an engagement opportunity to chat, to have a conversation, to annotate, to put something in a chat box or go into breakout rooms. Time to reflect will usually include a breakout rooms because some people prefer quiet time to reflect. Some people prefer verbally reflecting. And I want to honor both of those options and needs. The practical strategy is something that you can incorporate into your work immediately. And frankly, this is where I always look to you to help identify those things that I feel are natural strategies, but people don't always expect or see it the same way I do. So if there's something that I'm not pointing out explicitly, please let me know, and I want to make sure to draw attention to those. So for example, here, the practical strategy is having those visual guideposts. Having whatever you give orally, you're also giving visually. For our kids who need that visual reminder, Janice, I see behind you a time timer. Those are great visual reminders so that the kids see the time going away. That's very helpful on some of our kids who are not as strong orally as the others. I'm one of those. Okay, and then lastly, our resources. Those will be websites that you can take away and use for learning as well. So I do also always start with my teaching and learning beliefs. And the engagement opportunity here is I invite you to put a stamp or add something into the chat box. Which one of these resonates with you today? Which one speaks to you the most? Which one do you connect with? You can see I changed the words for the ones that I highlighted, the words that really stood out to me. However, this is an older version. One of the things that I like to do, see if I can do with my annotation here, is to change, and this just say, building relationships impacts positive change. Because yes, it's true that building the relationships with our students does. It's also these relationships that are important. Our relationships with each other, with our communities, with our families, with our administrators, with our paraprofessionals, with our related services providers, all of us working together. And that is going to make the best quality teaching is when we are working together as a team. We are actively engaging, we're growing together, learning together, and making sure that everyone can learn, because everyone can. And I think it's really that emphasis of, oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, clear all drawings. There we go. The emphasis, I didn't mean to clear everything. Let's see if I can put that back. There we go. Sorry, learning the new Zoom tips. Thank you. No problem. Oh, I'm just realizing that I don't need to repost the attendance link for people who've come in since I posted it last. That's how you'll get your credit for being here. There we go. Okay. Thank you for your engagement. You'll notice that I have most of all at the bottom. That's the big word all. Oh, go ahead. Okay. And I knew. Thank you. Someone else saying you're freezing, having cameras off. That's one thing I forgot to mention on that last slide is I do understand if cameras are off, although it's helpful when you are in breakout rooms. If you can put them on, that's helpful for your co-people. At least having conversations and engaging is useful as well. But we do understand that's comes along to actually something from the next slide is, I'm going to clear all that off, is that how we engage with each other, that we want to make sure that we give each other and ourselves grace. My stamps are in a different place now. I can't find my stamps. Spotlight, stamp, here we go. There's my heart, to give ourselves and each other grace. These are just some reminders of how we can interact with each other in a positive way so that we get the most out of working together. On some of these, I've changed the non-judgment zone to listen openly as well as to share openly on Speak Your Truth. But I also invite you to add something that I've missed. It's something that you think would be helpful as we engage with each other and support each other through this learning opportunity. I think sounds like you're all trusting me. Let's jump in then. All right, so I'm just going to take a moment. I'm going to put the Jamboard in the chat box for us so that you can indicate where you're joining us from. If you've already signed in the Jamboard and put where you are, then you can add in just a hello into the chat box. And let me pull that up for us. I think it's, here we go. I'll put it here so that we can engage. Let me put it up on here for us. And I'll just do a quick info for people who have not had any classes with me before, because we do have someone who's new. Let me clear that off. Give you a little bit about my background and what brings me to this work. So this is the Jamboard. On the first frame, you can put in where you're from. If you need help with that, please let me know. I'd be happy to illustrate. Looks like we have quite a few people from all over. And then we also have a parking lot, and then we have some other activities and things that we'll be engaging with later on. But this is an opportunity and place for you to put things in anonymously if that's your choice. For those of you who are new to engaging and working with me, I've been working with dyslexia since 2001. I started my career at a school for kids with dyslexia in California. This was after Peace Corps, so I initially was an ESL teacher. From there, I taught, that was a private school. I went on to teach public middle, high school, special education, and then I taught people to become special ed teachers in higher ed for 7 years. And so my journey, which started out professional, though, became personal when my daughter was born, because in the meantime, I had learned that dyslexia is, one, extremely heritable, and two, that it's in my family. So I started watching both my children, and now I've been on both sides of the 504 table, both sides of the IEP table, and it gives me a different perspective. So I look forward to, I love that I've seen lots of things come into the chat. I'll take a look through when we have a moment, and so I can get a little bit of information about you and what brings you here as well. Thanks for the hellos. I'll put the attendance back into for you, for those of you who haven't signed in the attendance yet. You only need to do once per session, but it is time stamped, so it will tell you when we are joining in. All right, so thank you for this little bit of introduction. Let's jump into our goals for this series. We are kind of, and I did click, so I'm worried if I click again, it'll go too far. We always say technology is great until it's not, right? So the work that we're doing together over our 14 hours this session is to look at understanding explicit literacy instruction and how that applies to teaching emergent readers and those who struggle, or those who need instruction in a different way. We're looking to expand our knowledge of those foundational elements of literacy, including phonology, orthography, etymology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. I know that's a mouthful, but little by little, the more we use those terms, the more we get accustomed to them. We've talked about phonology a little bit. In fact, I'm just going to go right to our outline so you can see, especially since we do have one person new. We started talking about the needs analysis. What do we need to get out of this series? What is the big picture of reading and science of reading and structured literacy? The next week, we talked about phonology and phonemic awareness. Then we talked about sound symbol correspondences. And today we're going to be talking about syllables. But before we do, I want to give you a moment to, and so hence the little chat box here. And I'll put the resources in for those of you who weren't here before. But I do want to give everyone just a moment to pause and to reflect and to communicate something that might have been circling in your mind since we last talked, something that's squared with you, or anything that you've been kind of thinking about, trying out, reflecting upon, that you want to bring up and verbalize to internalize, or process aloud, or question, or bring to the group. So I'll pause, take a look at what's come into the chat box, and open it up for someone to unmute or raise an electronic hand about the topics we've talked about so far. Trish, I'm so with you. Trish wrote, realizing how much we all have to learn about literacy. It's complex, isn't it? I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm still learning. And that's, I think, to me, what makes it fun is that there's so much to learn and so much we can be exploring. I do have some people who react with saying this is overwhelming, and you're right. But think about those poor kids And it's overwhelming for us, it's overwhelming for them. But the more we know, the more we can help them and navigate this complicated language that we have. And it's complicated because of its history. It's a complex, beautiful history that's really shaped it in so many interesting ways. And that's what makes it a more complex language than most. I hesitate to say opaque or non-transparent because the more you learn about it, the more transparent it becomes. Thank you, Angela, for acknowledging. It is overwhelming, but yes, we're all learning together. Any questions or anything circling that someone specifically would like to draw attention to before we start? Well, please feel free to interrupt anytime. Whoops, I jumped ahead accidentally. Let me try that again. Let's go back to our notes. I was trying to move the words out of the way so that I could see what was coming into the chat. So, all right, we're back here at our outline. Okay. Thank you for a question, Janice. I think I got that. Yes. How do you teach someone who quote unquote can't say the short A sound? He can say apple correctly, but can't isolate it. So Janice, that's going to take a lot of work on minimal pairs. So when I say minimal pairs, can he say hat and fat and mat? Now, if you say hat and contrast that to hit, or contrast that to hot, or met and mat, noticing that difference and trying to help him see. So sometimes it's actually harder at the beginning of words, like in your example of apple, than it is in the middles. I mean, the middle is definitely hard for kids to isolate because they're the hardest ones of the sounds. But with your vowel sounds, if you say like an apple, then and stretching it out and really remember, if you think about pulling it apart like a rubber band, and if you say fat, and if they're struggling with a sound, try to get to your continuance, especially in the beginning. Remember the sounds that you can stretch, like or because those blend more easily than the t or the k. That will take a lot of work, and that would take probably the expertise of an SLP. He sits on ah instead of like father. That is one of the ways that A can say, but do you hear an ah in apple, or do you hear an ah like in father? A can say many of those, A can represent many of those different sounds. But think about, and you know, I would say build the oral language first. Say, you know, what is this little thing with two ears? That's a cat. He's not a cot, is it? A cot is something you sleep on. So helping him recognize those little differences, and then we can get it to it in our writing. Good luck, Janice, and thank you for a question. It does take a lot of work. All right, so today we're talking about syllables, and this was the results from our survey. And if you came in, if today is your first day, I'll grab the survey later for you while you're in breakout rooms and put it in so you can respond. But actually, I think we have almost 34 today. I mean, a little over 34. We have 39 today. But I just like to show this to help us see that when we're thinking about predictable phoneme-grapheme relationships, including how we pronounce things with the syllables, and that really, we have a really wide range of knowledge and expertise here. So I want us to think about this as we go into breakout groups, that we have strengths and we have continuing to learn regardless of where we are. We have 0 over at the 10, but even at the 10, it was, I can always learn more, even though I feel like I have a lot of knowledge and skills in this area. All right, so let's start with a fun little playful video that this was, I'll put the link to this into the chat box for us. This was created, you'll be able to tell from when it was first, the fun way that this is it was created during COVID, a first grade teacher and her husband on making syllables fun for her kids. So I'm gonna, if you can't hear, it's just music in the background, but it's a lot more fun with it. Cherry, you mirrors, thank you. I'm putting their hands in front of your mouth. You have to be careful with the vowels. You can't it's not really going to make a difference between eh. There's not a different kind of breath. But Sherry, I would love to have more of a conversation with that because that's one of the things they talked about at the reading league last week. All right, so let's start with open syllable words from Billie Eilish. Well,
I just broke two close syllables. Vowel sound was short when they were closed, and now I am about to know about open syllables. When there's just one consonant in two vowels, then it is different. First vowel, and then you make the split and open syllable. Now it's open, like in the word broken, and bacon and unspoken, even the word COVID. It's a long vowel and it makes the long sound, like in robot and rebound. First vowel is a long vowel, cause it's open.
duh. Just a fun way to start us off. I was seeing some love for this couple in the chat box. And that it looks like it's aligned with one of your programs. That's fantastic to hear. She has all kinds of different ones. They are fun. All right, so let's start with a warm-up. I might not have put the link to that in the chat box for you. I think that this is one. All those links are on the resource guide that I put in earlier, but I'll put this one again for you. Let me add it in, make sure I'm putting it into everyone. There you go. And I think I forgot to pause recording, so, oh well. Probably more fun for people. All right, let's start with the warm-up. So, question for you. I'll give you a moment to read this. And as you are reading it, I want you to think about how many multisyllabic words are there in this short passage? What do you notice about them? How many different syllable types are used? I'll give you a moment. Once you know how you've counted all the multisyllabic words, put the number in the chat. Let's see what we have. I can see some counting happening. All right, some numbers are coming in. We're getting a bit of a range. 12, 2, 13, 4 multisyllabic words. Well, you can take your highlighter or writing feature and start underlining 21. Okay, Janice, let's talk about those. I'm so curious since a lot of numbers are smaller and some 2 and 4. So let's start. Angela, would you like to share one that you found? Or
one that I know.
Mhm.
I think I did bucket.
All right. In fact, where on earth is bucket? Okay. What clued you in that was a multisyllabic word?
Well, you've got buck it. Just how when I hear it, I want to pound out the syllables. So buck it, I'd pound twice.
You're pounding twice. What makes you think though that you have to pound twice?
I don't know, because someone told me years ago.
Well, think about it. How many beats do you hear? Buck bucket. I mean, you're right. I want you to know why, though. That's the important thing for our kids because they don't know why there are two syllables in bucket. You're right.
Well,
But-
I know now. I know now
Uh-huh.
it's because of the vowels and the CBC words. So you got BUC as a CBC, and then KET is the other CBC word. So you break it into the two. But I didn't know
Mhm.
that a year ago.
Okay, so little by little, but when you think about, I think Janice is saying every syllable has a vowel sound. I'm seeing most people are saying about 12 or 14. Let's go ahead. I'm going to pull them up and see which ones did you have that I don't, or vice versa. So I will say the first time I did this, I had a lot more than I have now. So you might have caught some that I don't have changed to blue. Let's talk about some of them as why. Because, for example, Janice, let's go with what you said. Every syllable has to have a vowel. I think or you said when you have more than one vowel, you have more than one syllable. And yet, look here, I have two vowels. So don't I have two syllables?
Do you only want Janice to answer, or do you want a response?
It looks like Janice doesn't want to answer. Go ahead, Carrie. Is it Carrie or
Okay,
Tari?
so it's Carrie. ED
Go ahead.
can say t or ed, and it only makes another syllable if it says ed.
Exactly. That one caught me at first because I was just looking at the vowels, but I had to say it to exactly what you're saying, Kari. I had to say it to realize striped, stared, scarred, slopped, sloped, scared, scarred. And so those, and caused, because exactly, I've got a suffix, but I don't have a separate syllable. So I love seeing in the chat, people are talking about, oh yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? It's not just the vowels that you see. And so when I was teaching at Chartwell, the first thing that we did is we would box our suffixes. Now, next week, we're going to talk more about why there are two R's there. And I'm going to underline my AR, or where's another one here. I boxed my suffix and I recognized here, oh, because there's only one R, I had an A consonant E for my base word. It was scare. And I dropped my E when I added the ED. Here, I doubled the R when I added the ED. Those are things we'll talk about more next week. But the first thing we did we would box our suffixes, box our prefixes, so that we would see what is the base word. In this case, their base word is rip. In this one, it's ripe. And so that's a crucial piece to think about. That, thank you. Those are those three sounds. It is. I did the same thing for those of you who were saying, oh yeah, that ED threw me off. It did the same thing for me as well. And so as you're saying, every vowel doesn't automatically indicate a syllable. You have to say it to feel the beats. So Angela, when you said bucket, you're feeling the beats to it in our language. You could stomp it out, bucket, your chin is dropping down a couple times. There are actually a few different ways. So I'm going to clear all this off. Clear my drawings. It's not as fast as intuitive as it was before, but we'll get there. To what is a syllable? So you mentioned I'm going to pull all this up at once. You mentioned the beats. Some people will clap them. Some people will put their hand under the chin. Another thing you can do is if you're calling your pet, I got a new one. I shouldn't say his name. I'll say my old one. Mitzi. Notice I've got the Mitzi. I have two syllables because I have two things two times when my voice is going up and down. It's that intonation, and in English, most of our words are stressed on that first syllable, especially names. Notice how I'm saying Mitzi. I've got that mid. That's where I'm stretching it out. That's where my syllable. So Janice, your stress is on your first syllable. Derice, right? Is it Derice or Dare? It's Derice, isn't it? You've got your accent on your second syllable. So it's making that Derice versus Darius. So you see the difference in syllable per accent, it changes the pronunciation. And so in names, we have to be especially careful on those. Okay. So the key pieces here, number one, when we're saying co-articulated, it's because it feels like it comes out all at once. So articulated is how we say things. And when I say co, it means with. So when I say the word cat, if you ask your kids how many words and how many sounds in cat, they might say one because that's what it feels like because it's one syllable. Whereas if I say Angela, that's three things that have come out of my mouth, even though is really six different phonemes. Each syllable feels like one thing. That's why we call them co-articulated, because they kind of get smushed together. And they make up morphemes. So when I said ripped, even though I have two morphemes, I have one syllable. So sometimes a morpheme is or is not a syllable, as Carrie pointed out with that ed. But a morpheme is the unit of meaning, and every syllable will make up, so you may have one or more syllables to make up a unit of meaning. Bucket was one morpheme, but bucket, we had two syllables in that one unit of meaning, bucket. So that's why I have that second bullet, that every word is comprised of one or more syllables. And as we talked about already, they all contain a vowel sound. Now, the reason why I'm touching my throat with that vowel sound is because if you remember when we were talking about the differences between consonants and vowels, that the vowels are the ones that open your throat. And so when I'm helping my kids find the vowel sound, so Carrie, you've unmuted already. Carrie, if you were to spot, what's the vowel sound?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. I was just
if you were to spot, what is the vowel sound in spot?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
yes.
okay. And in spit, what's the vowel sound?
Eh.
And in spat, what's the vowel sound?
Ah.
Notice I'm identifying that vowel sound as the one that opens your throat in all of those words. So hence, that's why every time when I'm talking about that vowel sound, I'm touching my throat, because I'm helping my kids recognize it's one that there's no closure, that's and there's closure there, but not in the vowel sounds. My throat is open for those. So I just have the pyramid here too, to illustrate where syllables fall in, that when they are, as you see, sentences are made up of phrases, which are made up of words, which are made up of syllables. We can break down syllables further into the first part. That's what we call the onset. And the rhyme is everything else. So I was changing, in Kari, I was changing spot to spit to spat. The sp out at the beginning was the onset, and all the rest was the rhyme. And then, of course, the sounds at the very top with the word spot, spot, as a reminder on that. I actually like this as a much nicer way of putting it. This is from Carol Tolman and from Reading Rocket's article, but it's also in her letters. I'll put the article here in the chat box for you. This is in letters training. And what I like about this is it helps us understand that syllables are both written and spoken. So notice at the top when we're talking about phonology, remember that's the spoken and what I hear and what I say. And notice how, again, sentences are made up of words, which are made up of syllables. That's in our spoken language. And when the hourglass comes to its center, that's when I'm representing an individual sound, the phoneme, by an individual letter. And that's where I get my one-to-one correspondences. Those are pretty easy for some of our kids, right? But when then I get into digraphs, remember last time we talked about two letters that make one sound, whether that digraphs are consonants or vowels. Blends, when I have, like in this spot and spit that I was asking Kari to, is it Kari or Carrie? The first one, Kari?
Sorry, no, Carrie.
Carrie.
Carrie,
right,
sorry. I will answer to either. I'm fine. Sorry.
Okay. I'm going to make myself a note to so the blend in those words that I was asking her are that sp at the beginning, where I have two consonants that they are co-articulated. It makes it harder to pull them apart. And then we have the word families like "ild," "old," and "find." Inflections is like the ED is an inflection. We'll talk about those more next week. And then, of course, we get into syllable types of written language, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So a little bit of research to support, though, on why on earth do we want to talk about syllables? Well, when I understand syllable types, it helps me decode those longer words. Instead of looking at that word as a whole, I can break it up syllable by syllable. And I will tell you, as somebody who taught elementary, the middle, and high, some of my high schoolers had no idea how to attack a multisyllabic word they've never seen before. They didn't know where to begin. It was just too overwhelming for them. So the more we can help them pull it apart, slow down, get my annotation here again, and notice how many syllables. Oh, I see a BLE. That's something we're going to be talking about later. BLE is its own syllable here. Syllable. Oh, now it should be syllable, but you know what? This is an imperfect science, this syllabification. And so the whole point is to get them to pronunciation. I see here syllable, syllable. So you could get into the cadence and the rhythm of the language. Remember I said I'm going to box my suffix here, and I hear type Y consonant E. That's the E. Some people call it magic E. I like, I'm starting to feel like if you're going to say bossy R, why not call it bossy E? But we'll get into all those. So these help them decode longer words and break them into pieces and makes it easier for them. It also supports English language learners because it's helping them, again, understand the pronunciation, which is the first step to be able to identify those words. Granted, of course, we need to have the meaning development as well, but you need both the word identification and the meaning piece. Remember the two sides of the reading rope. And then, of course, sorry from Cher, that when we know these larger units, it allows us to read more efficiently and spend less attention sounding out words letter by letter. Okay, let's clear that off and get into those syllable types. But before I do, one caveat, as I've mentioned, yes, these are both oral and written. But when I'm talking about syllable types, we're talking about the written form. And you'll notice these in these two examples. Remember when I said the syllable Mitzi, my dog's name? Mitzi. Even though, let me actually write it for us. The annotations over here really weird. But we can do this, right, everyone? I'm going to get my text here and write Mitzi. So even though when I say Mitzi, notice how my T is very, very quiet. I'm kind of ending it quietly and then going into the Z part is Mitzi. I'm going to divide that here, Mit Z. Even though I don't say Mit Z, I say Mit Z. That T is just real quiet there because I'm touching it and before I'm going into the next one. But when I say the same thing with middle, it sounds like middle, but I'm going to have my kids divide here so that they remember that this is a short I, just like I'm dividing here. So I remember it's a short I. So it's a convention to help my kids remember. And some people will say it's not exact. You're right. It's a convention. It's a tool to help you pronounce things correctly. Same thing with affectation. I have that affectation, but I'm going to have my kids divide here between the F's to help me remember that that A is short. Affectation to help them. So again, it's just a tool for helping. But you notice here that this would be the oral and this is the written and the visual, what you see. Okay, let's get into them. And for some of you, this may be a review, and for some of you, this may be new. So let's start off with to see. We will go through each one of these individually, but let's just do a quick little pre-test, see how many you know, see if you can list any of these 6 written types of written syllables. And a little hint, they are all in that sentence I gave you. So I'm going to give you a moment to either write down on paper or write down in the chat. See how many you know. You can either put a number into the chat or you can put the names of them if you know that, whatever you're comfortable with. Angela started with the consonant LE. I'm not going to pull them up yet because that's actually the last one because it's not as common. Carrie, she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Carrie's got them all up there for us. Danielle says, I've got 6. If you're still working on it, you don't want to look at the chat box because Carrie's got them all there. It was taught last, but the first one remembered. So Angela, we just did one too, didn't we, with syllable? In fact, that's right here, the BLE and syllable. All right, let me pull them up for us and let's have a conversation about some of these terms. So Carrie, I think what did you use for consonant LE? You said silent E. I see Janice is saying silent E. And what did you say? You said magic E. So the reason why these are the terms that we used when I was teaching at Chartwell, and they were because most of us were Slingerland trained. I will say one of the things that we did there, I'm going to change my color on my pen here, is we would have the kids do, I think you saw me do with the word type, is we would connect the vowel and the consonant and the E because that's what they're scooping around as the consonant. So they would say vowel, consonant, E syllable. This is a consonant E. I am starting to wonder though, and think about this as a split digraph, because that's what it technically is. The vowel consonant E it's two letters that make one sound. So I'm kind of starting to move toward that. The same thing with the vowel teams. Why not call it a vowel digraph? Since we have consonant digraphs like CH and TH, why not also call this a digraph? Two letters that make one sound, or a trigraph, three letters that make one sound. So just some food for thought on the different terms with that. I've also heard the consonant LE called final stable syllable. Open and closed are pretty commonly just called open and closed. Go ahead, Kathy.
I was just thinking, while we're doing silent E this week in my class, and thinking about if you're calling it a split digraph, then when you have regular digraphs, it's hard for the first graders at least to like, is it an AI? Is it an OU? Is it whatever it, well, that's more of a diphthong. But anyway, they have a hard time remembering what it is. And with the silent E, it's always an E. That's the
True,
only
but
difference.
my frustration with the silent E is that there are other reasons for silent E too.
True.
So that
Like
silent
we
E
had
is
have is one of the words that we were trying to highlight. We're like, don't highlight have.
That's exactly what I mean. Have or else or mouse or moose. And remember when we talked
True.
last time about E could have other reasons.
True.
So that's why I do like vowel consonant E, because that's really descriptive. It's a vowel, it's a consonant, and it's an E.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's food for thought.
Yeah.
I've see this one called magic R. And so if you're going to say, or not magic R, it was bossy R, that's what it was. And so I think if you're going to use that as bossy R, why not call this one bossy E? Because the E is affecting that sound, isn't it? Just the way the R is affecting the sound. So just food for thought as we think about what's going to, Angela, live and live is a perfect example of that. Let's see, phonics first uses magic E, that some people call it mama E. I know. Wouldn't it be nice so that's the thing, is whatever you're using at your school, just as long as you're consistent with among all the teachers, that would be a lot easier for the kids. I like it. So Carrie, you've got 11 reasons. I've seen 7, so I'd love to have a chat about that on different reasons for silent E. Bossy E, so if you're going to have bossy R, why not bossy E? So just illustrating that there are many different terms you could be using. But the point is the vowel sound that we're paying attention to in all of these, whether it be the A in cat or the E in he. Now, I will say when I was at Chartwell, we spent a lot of time, and you'll see when we go into these a little bit more, we actually did not necessarily do them in this order because, let's see if I can get this out of my way. Oh, that's much better. Because I taught kids who were not necessarily emerging. They were older kids who were struggling. They were kids with dyslexia. And so I did not do my open syllables right away. I did not do them in this order because there are very few open syllable words that are single syllable. And I was not ready to go there with my kids. But you could do single syllables for 1, 3, 4, and 5. And you're just not going to go into multisyllabic words yet. So I'm going to wait on number 2, because I bet you all could come up with a handful of other open syllable words that are single syllable. We'll talk about those in a moment. All right. So, oops, there's my little smile. I'll get all that off now. Clear that. There we go. Okay. So some references for you. There is Appendix A in the Common Core. This link, actually, is it on the last one? Where's my link to that? I think I took off the link because it broke, but then I put it on our resource list. So let's see if this one will work for you. If it doesn't, I will get the new link, but it is on our resource list. The Common Core Appendix A does have a good listing of the syllable types. When I say good, it's not perfect, because if you'll notice that there are some multisyllabic words that they are just inconsistent in how they're presenting them. So let me get my pencil here and illustrate. So dapple, hostile, beverage. Wait, beverage isn't a 2-syllable word, is it? So they should have divided this edge, and that could, there we go. Compete, despite, notice how they had these ones divided, but they didn't here. program table recent, and that so it's inconsistent. So it's just going to take a little bit more food for thought. Notice they're using magic E as an example for the vowel consonant E. They do say vowel teams, vowel R, consonant LE. They're pretty close to what we've talked about, with a description of them, which we're going to be talking about in a moment, as well as some examples. In our handouts, you'll also see the Clover handout, which is from a colleague of mine who was an OG trainer, and where you see Clover is an acronym standing for closed, consonant LE, vowel teams, silent E, and is really great and uses Velcro, which I like too. It's like something to stick. So just another resource on that. Okay, thank you. Link didn't work for Common Core A. I will get that when we break out rooms. Let me put that in for you. Common Core A. I will fix that. All right. We'll be going into breakout rooms soon where you can chat to each other at least about the first 2 syllable types and just syllable types in general. All right, so let me clear all that off. And we're going to go into the first 2. We're going to have a video, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to chat. Because I'm realizing it's been a while, so let's get into these quickly so that you can have some time to talk to each other. All right, so those closed syllables, you've probably seen it's that short vowel sound. We say it closes off the real vowel, but it really, and even the difference between short and long linguistically doesn't work. Because if I say a or a, I can hold those equal amounts of time. It's just a term that we use to describe that sound. Is it a tight or is it a lax? Short and long are the easiest ones that we're most used to using for kids. So it closes off the vowel. It's going to make it short. It's going to make it the a, or as you'll see in a video moment, the gesture sounds. And so we might teach it as a consonant, the keyword and the sound. So for example, A followed by a consonant, and apple a or a apple a, depending on which program you're using. The key point is to make sure you're recognizing which ones are the short ones. Notice I've underlined just the ones that have their short vowels, not all of them. Umbrella, but even at the end, the that's a schwa. Octopus, we've got a schwa in the middle. Echo, that's a long. So I've only underlined our short ones. And just as a notation here, that approximately 43% of our syllables are closed syllables. So you can get a lot of ground here. And Janice, when you said your kids who are struggling with that there are a lot of words with that short a that you could help work with them on to help build that. All right, so now the long one, obviously if those were short, these are long. These are just where it says its name. You can see like in baby and meter and tiger and my. Notice how I don't have very many single syllable examples. If I think of he, me, we, go, my, there aren't a lot. So this is really when I'm getting into the multisyllabic, and we'll talk after in a little bit about how to divide those. Lunar and candy. When we've looked at the closed and the open together, that's almost 75% of our syllables. So it's huge, just these first 2. And we don't have any consonant to close it off. Baby, meter, tiger. So you're dividing here. That's there is a consonant there, but it's only one consonant. So I'm going to have that first sound being the long one. And so when I'm dividing these ones, I'm going to divide it before the consonant. Baby, meter, because this is what keeps it long. Pony, music, lunar, and then candy. This one is a short. It's a closed syllable and an open. Thanks, Janice. Those long Y's. Long Y's, yeah, there are a few, but not a lot. Okay, let's get into this video of a teacher. Go ahead, Danielle, before we get into that.
I just wanted to share that I had the aha moment I want to share with other people, is that we actually took the words and put them on the door and cut them so they could tell we did both closed and open, and so they could tell when it was open or closed, and it was that multi-sensory. Just 2 cents.
I love
that was
it.
super helpful.
Okay, Janice, you're making me really curious on the origin of new, because we also to say often that we don't end an English word in a U. Danielle, that was you who just spoke, right? Yes, okay. I'm going to lower your hand for you so we don't no. Okay. All right, so let's see this in action. The video is a little bit long, and then we'll go into a pause and reflect. So I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I'll show enough bits and pieces so you can get the idea of the whole practice. So let me pause the recording. Right about that. And you have the long sound for the vowel. And then what she's going to be doing is sorting her words. As you can see, after she distributes the cards, the students are going to take turns categorizing them as open or closed. And then she's going to review them. And I think we'll just have a little bit here where she's reviewing them. And I'll unmute that and press play again for us. And then we'll give you a chance to chat about it. I'll make some breakout rooms for you to chat with others about this. And I do want to have options. So if you prefer to not go into a breakout room and just chat with people around you, or to do some personal reflection, that's up to you. But I just want you to have a moment to pause and reflect and think about the differences between closed and open syllables, about what a syllable is, any surprises or aha moments or thoughts that you've had so far. I'm going to make the breakout rooms for us, and let you chat with others. So let's see, something's come in. No problem. I will make sure that people can give options of joining in or joining out. So let me go ahead and I'm going to make rooms, and then I'll make them 4 or 5 people per room. And I will add a room that I can move people to if you just want to be hanging out and not. I've gotten a couple of messages of people who are going to be by themselves and not able to engage. So I'll make sure to have big enough rooms for the rest of you to talk. If I'm wrong, and if there's no one in your room and you want someone to talk to, come back. So again, you can teach these together, but help them recognize and play around. This is where you can help them recognize the set for variability, or that you have to flex them. Remember, like, we have to flex the letter S. It could be a Z if it comes at the end, like in his and boys and rose and nose and such. So here we have to flex. Is it E or E or A? And you just try it the different ways. So just some strategies to help your kids. People have asked me, how do you know if it's an U or an You have to try it. Because moon, it just doesn't work very well on our mouths, versus moon does, but book, no. And so comedians play with this when you think of good and food. We don't pronounce those two O's the same way. You have to flex it, and our language has changed, and some places will pronounce things differently than others. So it's play around with it and see till it fits into the pronunciation of the dialect you're using. All right. So, Did I hear someone? Okay. Catch me anytime. All right. And then last, of course, but not least, our consonant LEs. These are only at the end of multisyllabic words. We pronounce them by blending that consonant and the ol sound. So it's bol, kol, dil, fol, gol. These are easy for reading, not so easy for writing. And this actually used to be spelled with the E where it's supposed to be until the French invaded. As I always say, when in doubt, blame the French. I say it affectionately, it's my second language, but it actually is they do form verbs like in tussle, or if they like babble and sparkle. They can form nouns, and especially in the diminutive, like icicle and thimble. They can form adjectives like brittle. But it's, again, it's not something that they have to be writing quite so much. I mean, little is a very, very common one, and you have to help them recognize that TLE says toll. Now, the asterisk that I have on the SLE is because that is really, really rare. That's only in the words hassle and measle and tussle. And most of the time that if you have, for example, castle, you have the STLE. Instead of just an SLE. And so when you say, how do I know? Again, one of my favorite sites, not the Edym Online, but onelook.com. And I'm going to search by an SLE ending. And I'm going to filter it by commonness. And I want only the common words. And even those, come on, okay, I see aisle. And that's French. I see hassle. I see aisle again. That's not, it's French. Measle. And some of these I don't think are real words. So SLE is probably not the one you're going to choose if you hear soul. It's probably going to be STLE, like in castle. And this is, again, I can just look at how common, not very common, huh? Only 22 words, and some of them don't even look real. Okay, so now how do we get into the syllable division? I've kind of alluded to these a little. Notice that most common is between the two consonants. If there are more than two, you want to keep your blends or especially your digraphs together. You want to think about, for example, oh, here's a fun one. There was an example from Louisa Moats. This one relies on knowing some morphology, which we'll talk about a bit next time. But this isn't read just, isn't it? This is one that we're not going to teach before we teach morphology. This is one where I'm going to have to say, okay, this is actually a prefix re, and my base word is adjust. Adjust. You notice how quickly I'm saying that? It feels like it's not add just, it's adjust. My accent is there on that second syllable, adjust. That just kind of, that becomes So you have to think about where you're dividing, and the key point is to get to, so people could see that as read just, and like, no, that's readjust. So helping your kids focus on all those parts of the word. We'll talk about morphemes more next time. A caveat here, though, when we are teaching these, and then I'll show you how to get to have the handouts, is that you can spend a lot of time here, and I invite you to please do so until they get solid with those short vowels. So remember that when Janice, I think it was, who was saying her kids struggle with the short A, spend a lot of time with just those short A words. Then you're going to want to spend quite a bit of time here. And when I was at Chartwell, we spent a lot of time, good, that works, with these first two before going into the third. Why? Because this third one is a lot less common. This one is a lot less common than this one. So if I have only one consonant between my two vowels, I'm going to first try after the vowel. If that doesn't work, I'm going to go after the consonant. And if there are two vowels, you obviously would divide between them. So let me show you how to get here, and then we'll do a teaching demonstration and give you a chance to talk to each other again soon. So I'm going to clear all this off. It's a little bit more clunky. My apologies. I'm not used to, they've changed, Zoom changes on me. Okay, so let me get to our handouts for you. If you got to your structured literacy instruction, Google Doc, looks like one person's on there. I'll grab it again for you for those of you who are not. Copy URL, put it into the chat box. Oh, looks like somebody else is joining. You'll notice that there is this tiny URL Dyslexia 101 handouts, and that's where we're going to go to get you your takeaway handout. Because all of these are ADA compliant, you can share them. They're accessible by e-readers as soon as they come up. So we're going to actually go to we can go to Clover, but we're going to go instead to our Franken handouts, because this has both the syllable types that you just saw and the syllable division rules. And the reason why I haven't separated them out is that I think these are some good reminders for us on the intro. This was from a presentation that my colleague Kate Franken and I did in 2016 for the International Dyslexia Association. But here are your syllabification, your syllable types, and here's your syllable division, as you can have for a little printout. Thank you, Shanti. No problems. I hope everything's all right. Okay, so let me talk to you about how I would teach these. I'm going to need to get my guide here. Come on, here it goes. Annotations. All right, so now there are two ways I would do this. I'm going to show you both the quick way that once my kids get really accustomed to it, and then I'm going to show you the scaffolded way that I taught ahead of time so that they could get there. I usually do it the other way, but I think this is going to feel a little bit more natural. So when my kids are good at this, but they're still a struggling reader, they notice their vowels and they see that there are two consonants between, and they divide between. They notice, they underline their vowels, They see that there's only one. They're going to try here first, and they're going to sound this out as open, and they're going to try that. If it didn't work, then they would have to move it. So that's what they get to. But let me show you how I scaffolded to them to get there. I'm going to actually want a little bit thicker. Here we go. Let's try this one. Okay, so to get there, when they're very first, they've been underlining their vowels for a while when we just had single syllable words. Now, when they're underlining their vowels, I say, look at that. You've underlined two things. Remember when we talked about syllables, every syllable has to have a vowel. So you've underlined two things and two syllables. We're going to need to divide between them. Now, to help us remember where to divide, we're going to draw a pattern line from my first vowel sound to my second vowel sound. Now I'm going to label these. This is a vowel, this is a consonant, this is a consonant, and this is a vowel. Now, if you remember from our poster, and maybe I have the poster on the wall, that the most common is to divide between those two consonants. And so then they can just go like this in their future. We're going to do the same thing with the open. I draw my pattern line. This is a vowel, this is a consonant, and this is a vowel. And they recognize that this is the most common. Now, when they get to something like this, and they try here, and they say, Steven, is that a word you know? No. Well, I can promise you that's a word you know. Try it again. 7, that's a word you know, isn't it? So again, yeah, that set for variability, you have to try one and not the other. Okay. I think with this group, then we had a whole bunch of people staying behind in breakouts, that we're going to do some decoding practice together. Why do I have this twice? I don't know. It's the same. All right, so these are really hard words, and I'm going to invite you to try them out. You could either use your annotations and draw on it yourself, or you can tell me where to underline. I'll do the consonant LE one in case people don't remember how I did those. And notice I half bracket my consonant LE, I underline my vowels, and I divide here. My first syllable is bam, second syllable is boo, third syllable zul. I'm going to put together bamboozle. Now, I will warn you, there are some really tricky, weird things here that I would not do to my kids. I'm doing to you because I think that we can have a conversation about some of those weird things. So thank you, Cherry, for starting us off with your word, marshmallow. And when we see your different divisions, you can read it for us, or you can have me read it. Kay Hamilton, what's your first name? Would you like to talk through one? Because you're not muted.
Oh, I'm not muted.
That's okay. You don't have to be. But now you just muted yourself. So if you want to contribute, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Ms. Hamilton. Is there someone who would like to talk through one? Janice is labeling hers. All right, someone did marshmallow. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you're underlining your vowels here, you've got an R, A-R, you have an A, and you have an O-W, 3 different ones. Sorry, Cherry, I should have encouraged you to underline your vowels too. I'll take mine off for you. All right. It takes a while to practice writing with your mouse. Jana says Jew. And she's working on where's she going to divide next, because I think judicial. I love, Janice, how you underlined the A and not the I after the C. That's one of the trickier ones. Why didn't you underline the I, Janice? You're correct not to underline that I, but why didn't you? And why shouldn't you have? You want to talk about it out loud, or does somebody else want to do it for you? I see 2 have done vowel consonant E's, but don't forget to link them because those aren't separate. I love how you didn't divide immune. It's only 2. Let's connect those, the vowel consonant E, then the U and dice. So Jerry's trying with another AL here instead of doing the CI. Why are we not, what's that whole purpose of that I there in commercial and judicial? the point, and I'm just gonna Jerry, take off your IA because it is just the A we hear that. Choose commercial. Commercial. What's the purpose of that I in both of those? Maybe I'll choose a different color to draw attention to it. Go ahead, Sherry.
I think the I keeps the A short. Keeps it from being long. I don't know.
Look at the C. If that I were not there, Cherry, how would you pronounce that C?
It'd be
Te-
A. It'd be
Maybe a
commercial.
It'd be commercial. It'd
Commercial.
be commercial or judical.
You need the I to make it a sh sound.
Exactly. Exactly. Because remember that C-E-C-I, C-E-C-I-C-Y can make a s, but it also can make a sh,
Yeah.
can't it?
Commercial.
Commercial, that sh, C-I is making the sh sound. Excellent. Strengthen. So I'm going to help out with this one, whoever did this, because remember that every syllable has to have a vowel. And so ST can't be a syllable and TH can't be a syllable. But I have a base word strength and I have a suffix en. And if I don't, my kids don't know that, I could still say strengthen. So you could either do here or between the G and the TH. Either one will get them to that correct pronunciation. All right, merchandise. Yeah, Cherry? Thoughts?
No, I'm just thinking.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Just checking. I want to make sure that everybody's okay. Pugnacious. Again, I'm only going to underline. Let me get my red here. And because my kids we use red for vowels because it helps us see. The OU makes the sound, and this I is part of that CI team. Pugnacious. Marshmallow, nincompoop, immune, scrumptious. And people are saying, should I divide here between the M and the P or the P and the T? Yep. Either way, is it scrumptious? Because feel the and P, scrumptious. In fact, I bet a lot of kids would struggle to remember to include the P or the M because the and the P feel the same, don't they? No problem. So the Falstad scrumptious. You've got, remember though that we're only going to underline the OUS because the TI, that I is needed for the T, just like the I is needed for the C. That I is making it a sh sound instead of a t. Scrump. It could be scrumptious, but it's not scrumptious. All right, somebody was brave. Spectro, graph. Excellent. Let's look at smudge. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's take that one off. And how many syllables in smudge? Smudge. Just one. So all we're going to do is we're going to underline that U. So remember, DGE is a trigraph. 3 letters that make one sound. It's a consonant sound. So your sounds are s, j. 4 sounds. And look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters because the j is spelled with DGE. So j. Just a single syllable word with that in the center. All right, abstraction. Again, we've got the ON. The I is there because of the T. These are tricky, aren't they? But you all did a great job. And we did dentistry. You could be dentistry or dentistry, either one, as long as you remember that. I mean, personally, with my kids that were struggling, I would have them, where's my little pencil here? Not an eraser, pencil. Oh, I see how I have to do that. Dentist. I would do this here so they can help remember that that's a short I. Dentistry. So you have those 3, dentist and tree. Everybody okay? All right. We've got that Y making that I sound at the end. That's a vowel.
That's sometimes where it gets tricky for me.
What was that, Miss Hamilton?
Oh,
It is tricky. I gave you hard words. Oh, you just muted yourself.
when I did the smudge,
Mhm.
Those ones I just have to stop and think, because you can say all the sounds, smudge, but it's just smudge.
Exactly. Only one chin drop, right? Smudge. And that E could throw you off because it looks like we should have another vowel, but it doesn't. It's part of the DGE syllable type. I mean, the DGE trigraph, 3 letters that make one sound. All right. So I'm going to clear all these off. And you all, fantastic job. That was a lot of hard work. A couple other little tips, and then we'll give you a chance to kind of have some easier words for you to practice in your breakout room or just have a conversation. Okay. We've talked about schwa a little bit. I just want to mention that they are really hard for spelling because notice what you feel or you hear in about. It's not a, it's not a, it's about, me, family. I mean, that's why I colored both the I and the L. Is how many people really write family or say family? You just say family. Parrot, support, analysis, pleasant, celebrate. I didn't mean the L's shouldn't be colored in those. President, bottom, album, syringe becomes a sound. So it becomes what we call swallowed. So it's not a clear sound. Freedom, circumstance, Pennsylvania, problem, duplicate. So notice where we don't have a strong accent, we don't feel the clear sound that we want for our kids.
Circum, pencil.
Mm-hmm. So it's not a clear pencil or it's Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania becomes, again, you swallow it a little bit. That's a swallow part. Okay. Thank you for saying them out loud so that you can feel that and you notice that schwa. And as I mentioned, so that my teaching tip here for your kids, when you help them find which one is the accented, is call your dog. About. Notice how I'm stretching the about is your accented syllable. Gets swallowed.
Pleasant. Pleasant.
Pleasant. That's your accent. It's on the pleasant. Enemy. Enemy. That's 3 syllables of enemy, and it's the that gets swallowed there. Family, not family. Maybe you say family. My daughter says it, and that's she pronounces it correctly. But most people say family.
Family. Parrot. Support.
Analysis. Analysis. Oh, thank you for underlining that. Should be a schwa for the analysis because it's not. Good catch on that one. I'm picking up to fix that.
President. Bottom. Album. Syringe. Balloon.
Okay, thank you. Someone else is having to go take care of her kiddos. All right. So I'm going to clear off those and I'll fix that analysis. Thank you for that, pointing it out to me. We're always learning, aren't we? Okay, let me clear all that off. And clear all drawings. And give you some tips. So things I've been already saying, but if you want to take a screenshot, these are the strategies that we used when I was at Chartwell. So if I'm going from a print to speech, I'm looking at the text. Remember, I'm talking about boxing those prefixes and suffixes. We say isolate, but that's, you can box them, you can circle, you can underline them, you can cover them, whatever you want. The whole point is get to that base word. So when I have my base word, I'm going to underline my vowels. And for my younger kids, maybe a letter combination like your DGE or your TION or your CH, depending on what your support, how your kids need to be supported in that way. Get you dividing between the syllables. Let's read those vowel sounds first, because remember, those are the hardest ones. And then we're going to go sound by sound for each of the syllable, put those syllables together, and then put a whole thing together with your suffixes and prefixes. That's the print to speech. That's what we call decoding. You're reading. Encoding, remember the other side of the same coin is going to be the opposite process. If I'm saying my word is wombat, what is my word? Wombat. Wombat, I have 2 syllables. First syllable is wom. What was the vowel sound? Ah. What makes it? An O. Okay, I'm going to set that O aside. Then I'm going to go wombat. What was the first sound? Woo. Write that W. Ah. Write the O. And write the M. So that's how I'm going first, but every vowel sound by sound. My second syllable was bat. Remember the letter that I had set aside was an A? Okay, because at. Now I can bring it to. And then I can add my suffixes and prefixes if I need to. And we saw some of these techniques to be, again, teaching prompts, teaching tricks. Let's give us some visual prompts like I have with the cards so that I can decode. If I'm going to do an auditory card, then I'm going to say, everyone, I want you to write what says I'm going to ask you to write what says I in the middle of a word, or that says I like a night. You're going to write IGH. Or what says I like in pie? IE. What says I like in pine? And you're going to go I constant E. So these are the where you're going to think about the knowledge of the words for your orthographic mapping piece that comes in as well. On the visual side, we're looking at the words and we're reading them. That's the converting print to words, their spoken form. On the auditory side, we're going to be spelling them. Lots and lots and lots of spelling. Because remember, we teach reading for writing. The more spelling we're doing, the more concrete we're going to put it into their memories. Right. And flashcards are the ones I was just example down at the bottom of those are some examples of things we do. Flashcards, decoding practice, reading text, flashcards, dictating words, writing text. These are some other practice tools that I have either used or found. The one in the middle, I don't remember the company that made that, but I thought, oh, that'd be so easy to make with a paper plate and some brad and a brad. And notice how you can take that BLE and move it around and make thimble, tremble, fable, bumble, bubble, babble, bauble, rubble, gable, crumble, stable, etc. You get the idea. The next one is you can go fin to fine, snip to snipe. I have one in the Jamboard that I made that was similar to that. Here's our Jamboard. Unfortunately, Jamboard's going to go away in a year. I really like it. I'll have to figure out an alternative. Notice how I have these E's, and then I can move it away, around. Met to meet, rip to ripe, mat to mate, spin to spine. So you can practice those with your kids in that way. And since we're at it, a fun little practice, this will be to this whole group as well. Why don't you put in the chat box or annotate it? Which of these has a schwa sound? Bonus points if you can tell us which of those vowels has the schwa. Does everyone agree with Janice? Janice says, I got the bonus points. See if anybody's disagreeing with her. Hey, Brenna, because people are putting it into the chat box. Yes, because lay and D, those are both lay. That's a long A and D. And then splat, single syllable word, you're not going to have a schwa, except if it's an unaccented word that we schwaify all the time, like the word the. It's not the, it's an that's a schwad. All right, excellent job. So a couple of, oops, what did I just do? Let's try this again. Trying to get to my annotate so I can clear that off for us. Clear all drawings. Okay, go back to, here we go. We were on this. There we go. So a couple tips. One thing that I'll probably be repeating this again and again is that we want to make sure that our kids decode the words. This is the get it right piece. That's the yellow and get it accurate. And then let's do some spelling so we can build that orthographic mapping. And through repeated practice, we'll develop the automaticity. So this is how we can help them get fluent with individual words. Later on, when we talk about syntax, we'll talk about building fluency at the phrase level. But right now, we're just talking about those individual words. We want to make sure that they slow down. First of all, stop. Don't guess that at that word. Let's sound it out. Let's decode it. Let's get it right. Let's develop the accuracy through the spelling process and my knowledge. And then with repeated practice, we can build our automaticity. Okay. Lastly, we have a couple minutes for you to process, and I'm going to put up this decoding review for you that in the background. I can also put one into the Jamboard if you'd prefer, but I'll give you a few minutes with this one. I'll give you a couple minutes with this one, and then we'll come back together for a wrap up, just for you to kind of process and talk, try some out in a safer or a smaller environment so you can make sure that all of you get a chance to try them as well. So I'm going to pause the recording, and I invite you to share out either any weird ones that you want to try, something you want to talk about, something that came up in a discussion. You may have worked on these, you may have had a discussion on your own, or whatever kind of processes you needed to do. Let's have a little bit of whole group sharing before we close out. And I think I have a couple more tips, just a reflection and summarize opportunity. So, hello, Deborah, go ahead.
I just more had a question, like when you run into things like an S at the end of the word, orphan, orphans, you just always include that as the second part of the word, and is that usually the case with multiples, like words that are multiples of something, I guess?
I would always box my suffixes.
You would box them so they're separate.
Yep, I always box all my suffixes because I want them to recognize what's their base word. So their base word is a 2-syllable word, or and fan, or fan, but it's because the accent is on orphan, it's on the or, because so here's a schwa. And for some of my kids, I would even put a little dot or something indicating that this is a schwa. It's not going to play by the rules in orphan. Notice too, I kept the PH together because of that consonant blend. So this is something that we always did. It's because I want them to pay attention to the fact that these are suffixes, especially because if you look at blamable, I have a suffix able, but then my base word was blame, which had an A consonant E. And so I would have them decode it like this and stick that little E so that they remember that if they're going to take that ABLE off, they have to put the E back on. And next week, we'll practice a lot more of that spelling rule and why they drop the E. But I would definitely box all those prefixes. Suffixes, like all that. Does that help answer your question, Deborah?
Yeah, it does. And so we don't include that in the syllabication, or it's its own syllable.
It's not a syllable. Because if I ask you how many syllables in orphans, it's a 2-syllable word.
Yeah.
I'm only taking that off for them to get into the practice of it, because remember with the ED, that was sometimes in syllable and sometimes wasn't. So I want them to recognize these suffixes. We pull them off and we Janice, I also do box prefixes if they're clear. I mean, sometimes if I have something like trying to think of a prefix that's not as clearly a prefix, that I may not, if it's something that I know, yes, I do try to box those prefixes because it helps me identify what's the core word. And that's when I start getting into the meaning piece. And Trish, your question of, is it exploited or exploited? Yes. But I would do exploit as your base word and then suffix ed. But again, if you haven't taught those suffixes yet, I mean, if this were, say here, I haven't taught suffix ly, I could go underline my I, underline my, I meant to underline just the ER and underline the Y. And I could break it into gingerly. It depends whether or not I've taught the suffixes yet. So if I haven't taught the suffixes, I will box them. And if I haven't, I will just treat it as a 2-syllable word. Accept and bitter and cream. All right, I'll go on to the next one and we'll see if there are any thoughts on that, or other thoughts that came out of your conversations that you would like to draw attention to.
Can I ask a question?
Please do. Janice, is about this page or the next page, or neither?
Something that came up that we were talking about, like in the word accepting. Go back to the other slide if you would. So when you have the suffix that all alone it says ing, but when you're actually saying it and you've added it in there, it becomes accepting. Is it okay for them to see that that consonant will be hauled in?
Yes. Tremendously. So because you're right, if I didn't know this was a suffix, sorry, it's been very, I'm still recovering from all the traveling, and I would underline this I, but also except ing. I've got that ng sound, which is kind of tricky. So if I think of ring and thing and ink, ank, onk, that sound is kind of tricky for our kids. But I could go accept. Accepting. Oh, but you're right. I do hear the t. I do hear that between the two. So I can do, if I can get my eraser. And I could.
I hear the same thing with some of the others, like if you did sweet and you've got est, but when you say it, it is sweetest. Sweetest.
You're right. And for something like that, where that EE is going to make the same sound either way, it doesn't matter if I say sweetest or sweetest. It really doesn't matter because either way I'm pronouncing it correctly. But if it were something like, remember the word we had 7, that E could be an E or an E, depending on where I divide it. So if I divide it, if it's 7, so I've got that sev first versus seven. So it's simply a tool to help me pronounce it correctly. So when you say doesn't matter, not really, no. If I go sweetest or sweetest, if I don't know that's a suffix, it really doesn't matter. The whole point is to try and get you to pronounce it correctly. Does that help, Janice? I mean, this is more of the squishy parts, is that yes, there is a right or wrong pronunciation, but even that, depending on where you live, you might pronounce things extremely differently than we do. I mean, how many people pronounce Washington with an R, Washington, with an R sound, or how many people pronounce, I mean, my name, I was raised Alicia and I prefer Alicia. So there are regional differences and there are personal differences. And so we have to think about those when with our how do we say that? So, I mean, for example, I used the word earlier, family. Many people say family versus family. All right, let's do a wrap up. Here are the multisyllabic words. Notice I highlighted the different syllable types. So let's try and just look at those real quick. R Washington. It's so funny that the vowel R's, that when people add them when they aren't normally there, if you've got anybody British who will say idea instead of idea. I lived somewhere in the Northeast where they said cousin instead of cousin. I even heard today that someone say across instead of across. And so there's an imperfect relationship between speech and print. We just have to help our kids recognize that. All right, so if we were all in a group together, I could say chanting. This first word, Pete, is an example of what kind of syllable type? Everyone together. Where's my annotation? Pete is our vowel consonant E. Remember, vowel consonant E. Up is, everyone together, closed. Here we have a consonant LE, an open, a vowel team, a vowel R, another vowel team. Did we get them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I actually underlined 7 there. The aw is another one. All right, so it is 6 o'clock. You all have worked very, very hard. Thank you for all of your hard work. I hope you had a little bit of fun along the way. I do invite you to just kind of put something into the chat box for a momentary reflection or summarization, or a keyword that you'd like to take with you. You can either put it into the chat box or into Jamboard. And we will see you next time. Next week is Tuesday, October 24th. We'll be talking about morphemes, all those suffixes and prefixes and roots. As a reminder, you'll be using the same Zoom link. If you haven't signed in the attendance yet today, I will watch the chat box and see if anybody needs me to. It is Abby, but it's little by little, just start. And I will be teaching a whole day about syllables. Let's see, this month we're doing handwriting, then we do, this November we do phonology, syllables we'll be doing in January. So a full day if you want to come back for more. All right. Yes, I will get the attendance again for you. Thank you for asking. And I will stop the recording. And I hope you all have a great evening.
I have a quick question.
Oh, I love whoever put in the clover. Go ahead.
I didn't get an email So I'm not sure.
Are you talking about clock hours?
To get the, I mean, it worked out because Janice, she just sent me the Zoom link.
Okay. So if I would suggest just holding on to that, because unfortunately, our system is only set up that it sends a reminder before the very first class, not every class.
No,
it
Deb said
did-
she's getting, she
Really?
got one for this one.
Okay, well, why don't you put your email into the chat box? And I will make sure that you get on the list so that we can get you on that. So I'm glad. I will let my secretary know that she's sent them, tell her thank you for sending out emails. So we thought she's doing that by hand because our system won't do that. Our system, I think, only does it for the, I have to stop recording here. I think the system only does